I'm not going anywhere. Well, I will go in just a moment, but I'm going to introduce our next panel up, which is going to be the last one for the day to close us out. It's going to stay on the sports topic, of course. We're now going to move from the business to the technology that supports sports, live nature, and streaming. So very, very important. Taking us through this one, we've got Ching-Ping Lee, CTO Mola. We've got Mahendra Nath Vyas, Executive Director, Planetcast Media Services, Kenneth Xiao, who's Regional Director and GM of Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia for Tencent Cloud International, and John Huddle, Director, Market Development Asia for SES. Guys, it's your turn on stage.
Indeed, cognizant, as John said, that we are now the last thing standing between everybody and a well-earned drink. So look, when I was thinking about preparing for this session, I was thinking about what is it that the technology has to empower for sports companies. And, you know, essentially I thought about three distinct things, right? What is it that you're looking for? You're looking for reach, bulletproof reliability, and, you know, the ability to enhance the value of your content towards the consumer. So sort of delivering content to the widest possible audience in the highest possible quality, and creating, I guess, increasingly immersive fan experiences that allows you to differentiate your content against increased competition for viewer attention. So really the technology that powers those experiences is critical. So maybe we jump straight in to discuss this and other topics. So, you know, CP, maybe starting with you, you know, as the CTO of a leading direct-to-consumer platform, you know, what are the most important things to you and your team when you are determining that technology stack?
I think if you look from a technology's perspective, there's always two ways to look at it. One is the technology itself. What can we do to ensure that the delivery of the quality to the user from the tech stack? But I think what drives the team as we go forward is really on the other side of the coin, where from the user perspective, from the user point of view, what actually are they getting? And this, I think, is the tough part of any tech organization, is how to manage this. That's why I have a phrase, it's called the art of technology. It's really trying to use what we have available today to deliver that kind of experience that our viewers, that our users will want to see, and in a very holistic way. It is something that every tech crew is always constantly really looking at. So to ensure that every day we are moving forward to give that little enhancement, that little improvement to get that best perspective. And it's typically easy to get from the 0 to 40. Then the 40 to 60 portion is also quite straightforward. Now it's after the 60, when you slowly creep up towards the 70s, 80 marks, and that is where the challenge starts coming in, because you do no longer see that big jump in the enhancement that you can do. It becomes very subtle. And that's where the tech peoples really are struggling, because how can you then bring more value, okay, using whatever we have today and preparing for the future, so that in the end, the users benefit from it, from a viewing experience, from a holistic viewpoint.
All right, so it's really starting with that user experience. Yeah. Okay. And so, Mr. Weiss, I mean, you know, you have a facility here in Singapore. You work with a lot of sports broadcasters, both here and obviously in India. What are those customers asking you for as a sort of a full managed service provider?
Yeah, we support sports for a long time, and basically we focus on cricket, and we face both the sides, in the sense that the broadcaster as well as the consumer side. And broadcasters definitely look at revenue maximization, and they are looking at opportunities, technologies where we can really insert a lot of advertisements, we can have some jazzy graphics so that you can do engagement of the subscribers as well. So currently, I think the viewer experience is more important, especially when we talk about linear TV. And that's where, you know, the point is whether we really look at any game. Essentially, that moment is very important when the goal is there, and that's where the opportunity the broadcasters want to encash. I'll give you an example of, we had not this Friday, the earlier Friday, there was a cricket match between India and Pakistan. And the last over was very crucial. And we could really increase the advertisement revenues by at least 6 times. We sold the slots at 6 times the cost of what exactly was sold. So there, the technology has to really come handy to make those changes immediately and put those schedules back and get on to this. So today the requirement is mainly driven at 2 bases. One is for the broadcasters who have paid huge sum for the rights. So they want their, that money for that. Similarly, for the consumers, they need to be engaged. And today, and these engagement challenges are becoming more serious when we are looking at a variety of generations now. If you talk about generations, 2, 3 generations are seeing the same sports, you'll find that the engagement experience has to be composite for all the 3 generations. Then only, you'll find the real eyeballs. So, and that's why currently, there are trends that for linear, the rights are sold differently. For digital platforms, the rights are sold differently. And even people are selling the rights where the game is not popular. So all these 3 things has to be really seen. And as a tech provider and the service provider, this is a great challenge for us to really meet all these 3 diverse requirements. Sure. So we have to create multiple feeds. We have to create, low latency feeds for linear. We have to create an engagement filled field so that, where the games are not popular, we have to popularize those games. So that's the challenge what we are facing. And we are really working towards that. And we will be very happy to really come out with many new ideas especially for the digital broadcasters, wherein we want to create a real immersive experience. Sure. Essentially, so that they can really realize that, yes, if I'm viewing this alone, I have some specific, pleasure to really look at these contents.
No, absolutely. And maybe we touch again in a few minutes about, the difference between linear and direct to consumer, because I'd be interested, obviously, in your opinion too, CP. But I guess, Kenneth, from your perspective as kind of one of the leading internet companies in China and across Asia, you've built out this high performance, cloud compute service. What are the challenges that you see from a cloud provider perspective? Because I guess when everything's working well, you're below the radar, so to speak. What are the unique challenges you see as a cloud provider in delivering sports events?
Okay, thanks for that question. I think you rightly pointed out that a lot of what we're providing is actually based on our own experience. So, for example, we are already one of the world's largest media company. We've got WeTV, we've got a lot of media and streaming services. So, in essence, a lot of what we bring to the market is based on what we've experienced ourselves, which is the good thing. But the challenge, of course, is that if we haven't actually experienced that ourselves, then we don't necessarily have the first-hand experience of solving some of these problems until they occur, right? So I think and it's not just peculiar to us, it's really across all hyperscalers, whereby, until we encounter an issue, we don't always have all the answers, right? But of course, we continue to invest heavily in the infrastructure space in anticipation of what we foresee as problems that we may face. And those problems are typically quite predictable. I mean, they typically revolves around, I would say, 3 key areas. One would be scalability, right? How scalable would be the solution. And within the bucket of scalability, you've got, what's your latency, what's your experience with watching content. So the scalability component is important, right? And the second component would be stability, right? The stability of the platform. And the third would be, I would say, security, very importantly, right? So we think about how do we make sure that we're investing in these three buckets: scalability, stability, and security, and how do we ensure that billions of users across this planet, don't have broken services. But glitches does happen, right? So despite best effort, you will see occasionally latency. You will see occasionally some form of downtime. And that's, as I mentioned, is not peculiar to just us, but everybody faces the same issue who are in the media space. But I think as long as cloud providers, they anticipate what are some of the common challenges and they continue to invest ahead of the curve, then they should be able to address some of these challenges.
No, understood. I mean, with my SES hat on, I'd say switch to satellite, but we're the dinosaurs in the room now. So just to kind of an aside to that, I mean, we've spoken a lot today around traditional broadcast versus direct-to-consumer OTT broadcast. When you're talking to broadcasters in the sports environment, or any broadcast in that matter, do you find education about the power of cloud, about the ability to virtualize the workflow to be important? I mean, are you in that journey now where people are heavily adopting cloud-native workflows, or are we still just on the cusp of that kind of taking off mainstream? And did the pandemic have any impact on that? Yeah, please.
Excellent question. I think, first of all, right, media companies comes in all forms of shapes and sizes. Some companies are, 100-year-old companies, right? BBC, for example, right? I mean, they've been around for a long time and very well respected. And then you've got cloud natives company that literally grew from the cloud. I mean, they grew on the cloud and they're just digital native from day one. So I think from a hyperscaler perspective, we are very empathetic of the fact that every company is on a different part of the cloud or digital transformation journey, and in which case it's important for us to align our strategy to the readiness of the enterprise that we're dealing with. So some enterprises will say, okay, I want to transform a part of how I manage my content delivery, right? So in which case, we look at what are some of the tools that we can provide them as, Lego blocks or API calls whereby they can actually plug services from the cloud without having to do a wholesale transformation, lock, stock, barrel, because that's going to be very painful. Because every time you do transformation, you're not just replacing a tool, you're potentially affecting processes and people's jobs, people's knowledge. So if you transform the entire environment in which, how you manage content, how you store the content, how you analyze the content, and you bring it onto the cloud, does a company have all the skill sets to manage that? So I think from a hyperscaler perspective, I mean, at least that's the approach that we take, which is how do we customize the experience, provide the necessary tools, and help companies at the pace where they're comfortable with. Right? Of course, as I mentioned, there are always digital native companies that are ready to go, and then you've got monolithic companies that are taking a bit of a dinosaur step, journey. But we got to help them in that journey.
Okay, so I mean, CP, I think you'll have an interesting perspective here. I mean, obviously, Mola is well known as a cloud-first company, but you personally have obviously had a lot of experience in the cable environment and delivering more what I would call traditional broadcast. So, I mean, what are the challenges and trade-offs that you see coming from those two perspectives?
I think what you mentioned is actually very true. Is when you come from actually traditional environment, the transformation process is really a bit more, for sure, a better way, a headache and messy, because you really need to take care of the whole flow. You need to take care of the people who is coming in from the legacy world. As you start transforming, the whole mindset, the whole flows, as well as the approach needs to change and massage to ensure that the people are comfortable. Because ultimately, as organizations, we are always people first as well. Whereas coming into a digital first environment, we have advantage of that we already have a stepping stone or a starting place where you can do the innovation faster. But that presents another specific area of challenge, because there is still a very distinct, I would say, gap between traditional broadcasting and digital broadcasting. And it is very critical at this moment, I find, that to find the fine-tune between the two. The two faction actually has quite a lot of crash in a certain way, because purely from ideology, from the way that it has always been done versus what needs to be done today. And in the digital transformation process today, we are also looking at speed. Right? In the past, where you look at analogs, when you make changes, you tend to do it at a safer, a slower process because you need to ensure the whole transformation works. But whereas in the digital world, because of what we call nanotechnologies and stretching, right, we are able to flip and flip back as and when we need in that sense. So the fallback mentality of the digital native tends to also be less risk, rather they are more risky, less cautious, which does present a small little challenge in the broadcast world because ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, it is the end user who is actually viewing the things, right? Even in the split seconds transaction fallback, the streams that we reach to the end users will be affected. The split black, right, which should never exist in the traditional broadcast world, is very prevalent today in the digital world. And latencies, buffering, all these are the key things that the digital natives tends to have these things that is a norm. But from the traditional world, it is not a norm. It is something that we need to look at. And I think this is the challenge that any of us, or many of us are facing, is how to bring that quality of experience that traditional broadcast has into the new digital world, such that it's synonymous.
So you're saying, in a digital first environment, you're less worried about, I guess to borrow the phrase, moving quickly and breaking things, because consumers have somewhat of an understanding that
I would say the tolerance level is slightly higher as compared to the traditional broadcast. But again, that gap is shortening because everybody's expectation that it is going to be as good or seamless, right? So for a digital broadcaster like us, we are tremendously being under stress to make sure that we are catching up, to make sure the technology stack that we use are able to provide the same kind of experience that a traditional broadcaster has.
Okay. And so I guess, Mr. Weiss, turning back to you, I mean, having been in this business, seen the evolution, what do you see in terms of the future of partnerships? We hear about cloud, traditional. What do you see in terms of the partnerships between video, satellite, cloud industry? I mean, are we moving towards a hybrid future where, all of these technologies have to integrate seamlessly together?
Yeah, I think you are absolutely right that we have to have a closer partnership. I remember almost 8-10 years ago when somebody asked me an investor asked me that who is your competitor? And I told that it is AWS. And he was shocked basically, but I said, and he calls me now that this is what exactly. So it's not the basis of competition basically. It's the competition of the technology which is getting matured. Say, when I talk about satellite is something which has to stay because there is no other way by which you can really broadcast any content efficiently. So it has to be there. If a match is to be broadcasted at 20 different places and across 2 continents, 3 continents, satellite is the only way. And that in sports especially, that instant is very important. And the content is basically has got the value only at that point in time only. The next moment, the content value goes absolutely down. You can't have those kind of premium advertisement slots on the secondary content. So we have to coexist in the sense that satellite has to stay. Cloud is a natural progression. What I see is if I upgrade my laptop every 2 years, it's like cloud is upgrade of equipment. When we were running facilities, we were having a separate equipment room. Earlier, we were calling common apparatus room. Then we were calling equipment room, and then we were calling data center now. Yeah. So it's the names are changing, but yes, it's basically upgradation of technologies. And cloud is something which has given us a lot of flexibility in terms of delivering content to various places in various formats, which was a traditional way was slightly difficult. But these are all natural development of distribution as well as the content workflow. Now, in a workflow, if we have to really look at different, the same feed is to be seen to different terrain, different language, automatically we can pull on or to a cloud, we can distribute it. Wherever it is there, we can change we can add the language profile, everything you can do it, and we can easily distribute it. So these partnerships are going to be more, useful for an overall workflow management. And we see a lot of these things happening in future, where, and SES is another example where you have really integrated a lot of things, the satellite with a kind of a data center, with kind of a facility for services. So these collaborations will definitely happen. And essentially, when we really look at the ultimate delivery experience for all the three platforms, like linear, which is still the key platform for sports, because I don't think anybody gets that kind of dollar in other mediums. So linear is there, digital is there, and then there is secondary social media and all, which is for Gen X, Z, or some people. So we have to have a close coordination with all these three technologies. And I'm sure the future is getting onto the right stride. Cloud, when we started, we were the early users of cloud, and we had a lot of issues because the cloud was never meant for video. But now we have seen companies are focusing where we need larger data set, we need larger analytics set, we need larger handling capabilities, larger compute capabilities. And those are now enabling us to really rely more on cloud than on-premise and other things. But these are all natural progressions which has to happen. And if we have come from a central computer to a remote, then we had laptops, we had the handphones, iPad. Cloud is a natural progression for media distribution. But sports, still we will have to give real credit and focus to satellite distribution also.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I would echo that. I think cloud is the only way to empower a hybrid future. And we saw that ourselves when we went on our own digital transformation journey. But just bringing back something that Mr. Vyas said, CP, I mean, obviously, you're a digital first company. How do you look at digital versus traditional broadcast? I mean, when you think about linear, you think about maybe linear streaming. What is your opinion here?
I think that's the thing. Linear, to me, is still traditional cable, right? Because that's where I started with as well. In the digital platform, it is just what we call instantaneous time frame of a linear stream. So even when we are actually setting up the matches, the live match to individual end users, it is still considered at the spot instantaneous linear stream. Linear to me is what we call programmatic. That means I have actually a 24/7 or a time slot of programs. And within different, from the sport arena, within the different time slot, I will then have a live streams that gets into that pre-programmed segment. But the delivery of that, I think, has also changed. We are no longer just obliged to use a traditional satellite, which is still a very prevalent method. But today with IP, with different technologies, we're also able to deliver all these capability to either the end users or to the partners themselves. So in that sense, to me, both actually will still have its own prevalent use in today's world. Again, it also differs from region to region, countries to countries. As a country mature, you'll find that the internet streaming, where we are at, will have more, I would say the pickup will be more, because as well as, I think from the aspect is the generation, the newer generations, we have also been exposed to those environments, so it becomes a natural sense. But for older people like myself, I still prefer to sit down on the big screen and then have something playing, and then when the sport starts, you also enjoy it. And at the same time, if you have actually a group of people around, that will make the whole environment different as well. But that to say, I think just now the earlier panel, someone was talking about sharing a stream on Zoom, right? And I think that is also very common today in the younger generation. You see people coming together on the Gmeet or Zoom, and then they will start to watch shows, start watching matches today. I think that is a natural evolution of how people interact, right? And also with the pandemic, people's social behavior has changed. So as broadcasters, the key, as I mentioned earlier, is how viewers sees it. So when we look at all those elements, is then how do we how we tap into that behavior and make it into something that the platform allows you to do it better. Rather than discounting, no, this is not the way to do it, but find ways to adapt and so-called, to embrace the new user behavior into something that you can actually work with the users itself.
So, I mean, just building on that for a second and cognizant of the time, how do you engage with fans during the match cycle? I mean, how do you take this new viewer behavior and actually use technology to drive a better experience for them?
Okay, so at Moonlight, because we're actually in a way, we're actually just starting up, we are still trying to understand our own viewers' utilizations and how they actually get on the platform. So the first thing that we did was, of course, to make sure that the quality of the streams gets to the users better, because especially for sports, where it's fast-paced actions, because we don't just do footballs, we do NASCAR, we do golf and so forth, right? Imagine in a football environment during a goal, you suddenly cannot see the ball flying where. So that instantaneous moment is where you lose all value. So from that aspect, when we first started, is really to eliminate all these basic fundamentals to make sure that when the user sees what they are supposed to see, it is at its best quality and the experience. Second is in terms of the latency as well as the quality of speed. Again, you do not want to see Cristiano Ronaldo running from one field, then suddenly it appears at the other end, right? That defeats the whole purpose of the match. You really want to see the whole progression. And this is all something that technology today by itself can do it. But it is the architects who need to bridge it together to ensure that the end-to-end delivery brings that best experience to the end users. And this is something that the team in Mola has always been looking at the data transmissions that we have, how we deliver to each individual handsets, and to optimize that so the users will get the best experience from there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I guess one of the outputs, Kenneth, is, when you have a service like yours, you collect a lot of data, right? So you can use that data to kind of determine content, analyze. I mean, what experiences has Tencent got in helping someone like CP with all of that data to basically maximize that user experience?
Sure. So there's a couple of things that we've done very interestingly. So one would be, how do we harness the data to build AI models that will allow users to be able to better, or us to be able to help the users to click on something and allow the AI engine to recommend content. So recommendation engine will be one use case that we've successfully brought out to the market. The other example that we've actually gone live is that historically, media companies would have an army of people just trying to do censorship.
Yeah.
And typically, you would have a team of a few hundred people. In fact, I just spoke to a Malaysian media company. They actually literally have 300 people just watching out for violence or porn, right? Just to make sure that there aren't some of these undesired content. But with data, you can actually harness and build data models and build the AI engine that actually do away with people. Yeah. And that actually provides a much higher degree of accuracy when it comes to compliance. So in Tencent, we have actually successfully deployed AI models, and that's based on data sets. You need to build this based on large amount of data. So the fact that we have been able to kind of collect some of these data points, we've been able to build AI engines that allows us to drive more efficiencies when it comes to the desired outcome. So in this case, which I talk about recommendation engine, censorship, and you automate some of these workflows. And I think my esteemed panel talked about workflows, and we continually look at how do we harness data to improve workflow efficiencies through AI tool sets. And that, again, requires harnessing data.
And scale, I guess.
And scale, yeah, of course.
So look, in the last few seconds we have left, let's do one quick crystal ball gazing each. So kind of what is the, as far as you're concerned, what is the trend we're going to be talking about in a year's time? What do you see changing for the fan or the industry? Maybe starting with you, Mr. Weiss.
Yeah, I see for sports, especially the trend is more on technology driven, because we find technology at every instant in the sports what we play. Today, even the stadiums are modern stadiums, smart stadiums, where we have a variety of boards which we can really swap it around and do a lot of things. Even the turf is smart, that they can really pick up a lot of analytics out of that. So if you talk about sports, the tech will drive the sports. But a caution for that is that it should not drive to a level that we lose the human touch of sports, because that's the real challenge in the sports. That whatever a man makes a mistake, that's what is the fun in that particular watching. But I think that is something which is going to be there, and we will find a lot of tech coming up into this. You have seen already, because the moment you have the rights which are going up, we will have the deliveries, we will have the players, all will be subject to a lot of, a kind of a squeeze for performance. And especially for us, like broadcasters, we will have a huge, challenge to really meet that. So technology-wise, I think we will have to continuously work on innovating ourselves, getting more views, more innovations for fan engagements, for taking care of all the generations, because in the last couple of years, we have even all generations are equally active. So even today, we have seen even my father is actively seeing the same cricket which my son is seeing. So we have 3 generations we have to take care. But as he rightly said, that he will see on a social media platforms where he wants to see with all his friends together and then enjoy those kind of things. So those viewing habits, we will have to really continuously innovate and do that. Essentially, I think there is no clear fix in the sense that I can have this technology for a particular. We have to have a mix of all the technology to take care of this. Because at the end of the day, we are into a business, and business should make money. So that's where we have to.
100% with that. Kenneth?
Yeah, I think the big buzzword will be metaverse. So metaverse is going to be a very big buzzword.
First time I think we've heard that.
Well, it's a trend, but I think Tencent is in a very good place to kind of bring along its many years of experience in gaming, in communication, in video technologies, in media entertainment tech, and really bringing that into what we call immersive convergence. But it's really the same sort of word as metaverse. So we want to bring that the immersive experience to the video platform world, but a lot of it will be the extension of gaming, right? So, imagine yourself as an avatar and me as an avatar, but we're living in different countries, but we're in a video experience and we're experiencing a same set of experience together. I think that's going to be a big thing in the years to come. And of course, very importantly from a hyperscaler like us is how do we package it in a way and take that to industry and apply it in real life use cases in the industries.
Interesting. And CP, bring us home.
Okay, not to be controversial, but I think the metaverse is something that is great. But I think from the angle of the sports, it is still not the end result of it. If you look at how sports has evolved, right? Previously, we go to matches, we have people wearing jerseys, all screaming together, drinking beers, and so forth. Then, as time goes by, streaming starts to happen. Yeah, then you get into individual home, you watch your end. But sports is not a one-way delivery. Sports is always a two-way, if you look at it. Metaverse is actually a good first step into trying to bring that back in together. Now, I think in the future, as I mentioned, it's about engagement. How do we then bring all these different friends or fans coming into the same match virtually, might not be in the metaverse, but a way for people to really play together or watch together. That's why, as I mentioned, like the way that people are sharing through Zooms, videos, even I see my kid, I see kids doing G Meets of watching movies, but they are not just watching per se, they're actually interacting with each other. And I think this is something that from a sports broadcasters, we need to figure out. How to bring your users together as though they are in a virtual stadium, but it is not necessarily a virtual stadium, but to bring that whole atmosphere back in during the match itself. So because sports is all about hyping as well, the excitement, right? Which cannot be done or very hard to do on an individual basis. And I think this is what we are trying to see. Where can we go to in this field?
Technology to drive an immersive user experience. With that, thank you so much, gentlemen. A round of applause for the panel. And thank you all for staying so late.
Good.